Thanks everybody. I'm Josh Lupresto, VP of Sales Engineering at Telarus. Today we're going to cover what everybody wants to cover. We're going to cover security. So imagine for a second, if you have a phone, whatever, you want to write this down, I'll give you a couple notes to take. But 2.7 billion, write that one down. 98 billion, write that one down. Anybody have any idea what those numbers mean?
How much money was lost?
It's close.
Okay.
Kramer. You're going to have to make some pick on you.
Yeah, how many accounts were compromised?
Yeah, so 2.7 billion records were breached last year alone. So because of those breaches, this year the Gartner estimate is that 98 billion is going to be spent on mitigating those breaches so that they don't happen again. And often if companies would have just cared enough up front, it would have been done. So, security is complex. To even become a CISSP, if you've seen that thrown around, you've got to do 5 years of on-the-job training. You've got to have somebody that's an existing CISSP vouch for you and be an advocate. And then you've got to maintain these certs, and you've got to be accepted as part of this worldwide entity. So, while security is fun, at the center of all that difficulty is the data. All of your customers all have the same exact problem. How do I secure that data? So while walking through that and understanding that data is, the layers of security is complex, helping your customers decide how much they should care and the effort that they should put into all these different layers is not. So think of this as we go through this, remember two things, 2.7 billion and 98 billion. And who knows what the landscape is going to look like this year. So I found this fun slide. This is the message that you hear right after every breach. We're sorry, we didn't mean for it to happen, we hope it doesn't happen again. But you have that feeling of what happens to a company. Should I work with this company after they get breached? Do I trust my data? Do I trust my bank? All those good things. So you look at those 2.7 billion records. Ask your customer a simple question. Do you have critical data? Do you have data that you care about protecting? Because what you have to do with security is you have to understand your customer posture. If they don't care about the data that they have, then we're having the wrong conversation. But we have to help them understand what a cost of a breach really is and how much that impacts them. So we'll start to walk you through a little bit of this framework of what that impact is like. So those 2.7 billion breaches, or billion records breached, on average that costs an organization $157 per record. So that might be the cost to recreate that data if it's locked down by ransomware. That might be if they get sued because they're regulated by SOX and HIPAA and they didn't meet all those compliances. That's the average cost to an entity to replicate that and recreate that data. So you start to ask your customers the amount of records they have, they do the easy math against those records, we can start to quantify what the cost of that breach has for them. So if they have the value, use that formula to get there. So because of those breaches, like we mentioned, $98 billion to be spent this year, just on security alone. Let's figure out where that is going to actually be spent. So this is a Gartner slide, and the nice thing about this tells you why I think we have prime picking ground to go after this, is that $58 billion right there is going to be spent in services. The rest is in product, but if they're spending that much in services and security and consulting, that tells you that your customers don't know what they don't know in all the areas where they have gaps at, right? That's your vulnerability assessments, that's your pen tests, that's your send a crew in and drop flash drives in the parking lot that say Telarus executive salaries, right? Those kind of things that people are going to pick up 70% of the time. So as you walk through that, this should show you how much is there and where the customers are from a mindset of we need help. And then you get into other things, infrastructure, identity, end user software like antivirus. Those are small, right? 5 billion is small compared to where the other spend is going to be. So this is our geek slide. We spend an hour long going over all these layers. If you really want to dig into more of what these layers are, who the providers are, how to talk about them, what questions your customers have, but we'll go through kind of at a high level on what these are. So like we talked about in the beginning, the core of everything is the data, right? And 10 years ago, hey, I've got a firewall, everything's behind that data. It worked, it was fine. But now people are everywhere, data's being accessed from everywhere, the threat landscape changes, bad guys are everywhere. You have to protect security in a layered approach. And so this is what your customers are trying to figure out. Which of these layers should I care about? Which affects me? And where am I most vulnerable? So either A, we know where they're at from a vulnerability perspective, and we can bring one of these layers and one of these solutions in, or B, we're part of that $58 billion bucket, and we can go in and look for all the different solutions and bring in assessment companies to try to figure out where their gaps are. So database is the big one, right? A lot of companies have a great perimeter firewall, but if they don't have security down at the database level and seeing the transactions and where that data is going, who's doing what with it, and is it match patterns or is it an anomaly that it's weird for somebody from China to request this much data out of my database? But maybe I've let an HVAC vendor in that has access from that and it matches that pattern. You don't catch things like that with a perimeter firewall. It matches a rule that lets it in and out. So database security is a key layout. Another one we talk about big time is WAF, and number 3, web app firewall. So this is where when we start to talk about, we hear what we're doing around with Imperva, even the customers that have the $1 million firewalls, the Palo Altos, and everything in between, you have to get additional visibility above and beyond what that firewall can do. So you have those stateful rules in your firewall that's allowing these guys in, block these bad guys, but those people that I'm allowing in or touching my data, touching my database, what are they doing with that data? And is that normal? Is that not normal? Similar to the database. So WAF is critical. Platform, we get a lot of requests for platform in that, what do I do for my operating system? What do I do for my end devices? How do I secure an OS? Which version of Windows should I be on? Which security update? Or I don't have the IT support team to be able to do that. Can you help? Yes, we have solutions that can come in and that can bring that, right? It's almost IT, it's almost security as a service. Sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's ongoing. Number 5, there's a couple areas in number 5 that I think are key. IPS, that's just a simple device you put in front of the firewall that starts to block some of the anomalies before they even make it to the firewall. And weird DDoS things that make it down to the network level. SIM, Session Event Information Management, is another one in number 5. This is key. So ask any of your customers, and this is later in the slide about their logs. Every device that they have has the capability to pump out logs somewhere. But it's so much information. There's no way anybody could ever pay attention to that, nor is it the best use of anybody on the IT team's time. So a SIM says, all right, send me all your devices. I will collect that. I will pump it over here and cross-reference and correlate against this database that's out there called the Common Vulnerability Database. So it says these are the daily exploits that are really bad if you match this sort of pattern. And so it takes these 100,000 line items a day, whittles it down to 5 or 6 things that are critical, and had the companies that you've seen on all the slides paid attention to those, they would have been able to mitigate those and might not have seen some of the breaches that you would have seen. So a SIM, if you've heard Alien Vault, you've heard Logarithm, some of the things like that, MainStream has a great play around that. Number 6, endpoints. And if any of you were in the other presentation that I did, we did a great endpoint deal through AT&T. So Bluecoat, Symantec, bought a company called Bluecoat, and we've all heard of Symantec. But it was a customer, a partner of ours that had sold nothing but network service to this customer for 15 years. Happened to listen to just some of the capabilities that we had extra. And so just ask a question about endpoint, ask a question about security. They threw it out there and the customer said, yeah, we're looking at that right now. It's a $2.3 million deal on antivirus, $8 a user. It was a very, very simple sale, but very big. Physical locks on doors, we actually do have options to do that. Badge readers, things like that. Processing GRC. GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. You'll start to see a lot of that now that GDPR is out there. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what the heck GDPR means. Does it impact me? How do I protect myself against it? But from a GRC perspective, there's some great software out there that we have access to from some of our providers that says, all right, Mr. Customer, you're regulated by SOX or HIPAA or GDPR. Well, these are the 1,000 things that you need to be concerned about, or however many it might be. And if you're checking the box here, you're on your way to fixing that or working on it. These are things that help customers walk through figuring out how to be compliant, but it's also something they can just hand to their auditors. We can give you tons of success cases on that. So if you have financial, if you have healthcare, anybody that's regulated, GRC is a big topic that they deal with. People, phishing, access management, that's what we talked about, right? This is the vulnerability assessments, this is the pen test, this is the drop in the flash drives, all those types of things to just, we don't know what we're vulnerable at or where our vulnerabilities are, but we need help figuring it out. And sometimes they'll say, hey, that's great, just do the report, those are easy, we can fix those. And sometimes it's, you know what, I don't even know what the acronyms are that you said we have gaps on in this report. Where do we go from here? And that same company that did the assessment can stay engaged and help mitigate. So sometimes it's a pro-service engagement, but we hope for you guys is a lot of those vulnerability assessments will lead to showing the gaps in the others, and then we have services in for security that are more of a residual basis. In perimeter, That's the easy one in this. That's where this all started, and that's all you needed 5-10 years ago, right? As a perimeter-based firewall. So we do have plenty of cloud and friend-based options for that. So all of that, right? Security is complicated. There's a lot of layers. We don't expect you to try to be the experts. If you want to, we'll make you the experts. But your customers need help. You see all this stuff out there, how great the economy is, how low the unemployment rates are. It's even worse in security and in network, right? Right now, there's a 0 unemployment for security engineers, for good ones. And estimate next year, there's 2 million unfilled security jobs. They can't find people fast enough. Now, to couple that, companies that actually have good talent, this is a cool stat that I found. Almost 50% of those guys get recruited on a weekly basis to go down the street for 30% more. And sometimes they go back and forth, and this company can't repeat that, right? So they need help. All this is driving. They don't have it figured out. They need help to walk through this process. So we like to use this example. If I go to one of the neighbor kids, I know on average I can charge about $20 to cut my grass. If you charge me any more of that, less than that, right, I'm not getting a good deal. But if I've got a heart problem, I'm going to go to the best cardiologist and I'm going to pay whatever he wants me to pay because I'm not going to skimp on that. Security has to be the same for your customers. They're willing to pay. They know that they need help with the expertise, and I think we can help you bring that to the table with all the solutions that we have. So it's all about the posture, okay? What is your customer's stance on security? Do we have data? Do we care? And sometimes we'll teach you all this information and you get really excited and you see all this data and you want to go run back and tell the customer about the breach and then you guys are going to get hacked. It's probably not the best idea. Because that guy's going to look incompetent. He's going to take that to his boss. His boss is going to go, you didn't do this, you're gone. Well, you should have gotten hacked by now. You're out of here. So you tweak that just a little bit and you say, hey, Mr. Customer, the posture that you had, this was appropriate historically. But the threat landscape has changed. The security role is getting complicated. The bad guys are everywhere. Here's a couple things that maybe you should look at that we can bring to the table to help you in some of these different layers. Are any of these of concern to you? So we help them lay out a plan. So we're going to walk through a little bit of what's a logical framework that you can walk through. And if you've seen anything at our ticks, you can understand a little bit where we pulled some of this, this framework. I think it's very beneficial. And you also have to understand that, A, every customer's posture is different, but some of them are in different buying cycles, and they're in different pieces of this, right? So we have to understand where they're at, where their head's at, what are key drivers for them right now. So we'll walk through that in a little bit of the framework to find out the stage that they're in. So the 4 pieces of the stage that we always talk about are prevent, detect, adapt, and learn. So again, where are they in that stage? How much do they care? So this is the key thing. Ask questions. So we're going to give you a series of questions. You're going to see 5 or so, 10 on this presentation, and we've got pages more if you want them. At any moment, if you get a question, just stop. And if the customer says, yeah, I don't know, I don't even know what SIM is, should we be doing that? Stop. Set the meeting. That's great. You know, we've got some expertise in that. We'd be open if we set up a call with one of my engineers, right, and set that call up, and we're happy to run that call with you. So what is their posture be? First step, prevent. Another simple question to ask. When is the last time that you even looked at your firewall, looked at your log rules? Some of these guys might not even know how to access their firewall. So we've prevented, we've looked, we want to see if we can detect, right? This is a really good one. Mr. Customer, if you had a breach, would you even know if you guys were breached? Could you be breached today? And how would you know? Do you have the intelligence on the network with software, with people, with technology, to even know if you had a breach? Now maybe we've had a breach, right? We've got to react to that in some way, shape, or form. This is a really good one. So that certification that I mentioned, the CISSP, it teaches, it's taught us, and it's taught the folks on our team that have that, of how does security impact the business? Not just from an IT perspective, but what business folks care about the gaps in security. And it talks about who owns the data, right? Because the guy that goes to jail at the end of the day is the guy that is the owner of the data. So in figuring out who should I be talking to, who's my pitch directed towards, ask that question of, hey, if you guys had a breach, who's responsible for that, right? Because it might not be the network guy, it might not be the VP of Ops, right? It might be the VP of Customer Care. You have to ask that question and figure out who that is. So now we're going to recover and adapt. What do we do? what steps are you taking? Mr. Customer, you've had a breach. We'd love to help you with some of those steps. What steps are you taking to harden that posture and make some changes? So this is a really busy slide, but it goes into who some of our providers are in that space and where we think they play. So in the preventing space, right, this is a Fortinet, this is a Meraki, we're putting some sort of firewall in there. And then we have some that kind of fall in the middle. Notary will go in, they'll put an appliance on-prem, and it just says, Mr. Customer, what do you have out there? I'm going to crawl the network, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to give you a report back that you can then do something with. And I rank that and score that and say, this is a threat level 6, or this is a 9. And it gives you a cumulative score, just at that lane, at that location. How does this location stack up, right? And what can you do to go ahead and prepare some of this? And then we've got our semantic we talked about for antivirus. So somewhere between detect and react. These providers all have some sort of different offering, whether it fits into SIM, whether it fits into vulnerability, or scanning, or detecting, some different product that fits into there that helps us figure out how to detect and react. Now, after we've detected and reacted, how can we adapt, right? What are the next level things that we can put in place that can help us get more visibility, right? Get the high visibility these customers want into that environment, and that's where a lot of these guys fall in. And then this is the next level stuff that we're always talking about, right? This is the AI. Some of these we have access to on the bottom right, some of them we don't. Silence we do have access to. It's one of the leaders in the space. We've got a partnership with one of their largest partners. That's a residual antivirus solution with one of the best AVs out there. So the three that you see on the top, their pitch compared to all these others is slightly different. So these guys all fit in some sort of segment. Some might fit into 2 segments. But the 3 that you see here, we'll take a look, specifically HTG and Quest, we'll take a look and say, okay, let's analyze the customer's environment, and maybe they made an $8 million investment in this solution or a $100,000 investment in this solution, and they're going to be mad if I tell them they need to forklift it. Because a lot of the times what happens is either A, those are bad solutions, but more often B, they just weren't rolled out right. The guys that bought it got sold on it, and it never got implemented, right? They never took it out of test mode or learning mode, those type of things, and actually put it in place. So they will come in and analyze that, and if we need to layer in support to support this unique security appliance, we have a lot of solution expertise with some of these providers that say, you know what, for X dollars of service a month, I can be your expert on Palo. I can be your outsourced IT for Palo. But if we determine that none of that makes sense, and the solution that you have is garbage, we have plenty of solutions in there to replace those and put that into a residual fashion.
Are all those solutions under the Telarus umbrella, or?
All with the exception maybe of Amazon Macy and Darktrace. I think we do actually have a way to do some of the identity security stuff too. But yeah, everything else, yeah. So this is a new thing that we're trying with one of our providers. This is Quest specifically of, okay, we've identified all the things that Telarus has in the portfolio. And this is Quest's product set specifically into these 4 areas. We'll pick on risk management. So if you've identified with your customer, hey, when's the last time you had a firewall review and assessment? When's the last time you had a little security workshop to figure out some of these gaps, right? And I say, hey, I don't know, it's been a while, I'm open for that. Quest will fly out, bring an on-site engineer, we could do a day thing, we could do a 6-hour thing, and a couple of these things need to be done remote. And we'll do a free assessment for these customers in any of these topics that you see here, because they're so convinced they can get about an 80% hit rate in converting this into some sort of product that they have that fixes those gaps in a residual fashion. And they'll give you a bonus, a $300 or $500 bonus just for setting that meeting up if you can get the customer to sit through that for 3 or 6 hours. So super beneficial to help walk into some of those. So coming back to our questions, I'm happy to share some of this information with you guys, some of these questions, but these are the 5 that we recapped that I think are key to ask to help uncover and figure out where these customers are at. So I encourage you to ask the questions. And again, we're doing one-off dives all the time, and I've talked to some of you about this already, that here are the layers in security, here are some of the questions to ask, here are the pain that your customer goes through, and here's how you discover those and implement those agreements. So please connect with me if you want to go through that. We are happy to do that all day long. So, question. First one to raise a hand here. If you ask any of these questions to your customer, the response is, I don't know. What do you do?
Set a meeting.
Hey, Telarus.
Got it. That's it. That's the show. Thanks for coming. Questions? Yes.
That slide you had, the Dante's Inferno slide, the help basically with the 9 points.
Would it be possible to get that slide with carriers that are under each one of those names as well?
Yeah, easy.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. Good.
The other slide you had with all the logos, Dell Secure Works are actually just Secure Works now and TrustWave. Where would they fit in that?
TrustWave, as of last week, we can do through Nitel, a la carte.
Yeah.
There's two things we can do through TrustWave, right? We can do their SIM product, which is great. We've already got, I think we started that partnership a week ago. We've already got a deal in the funnel. And it's a really simple deal. It's like 4 endpoints, like a router and a switch and a firewall or something like that. And they're doing the Nitel SD-WAN thing, and I think it's $1,000 or $2,000. I mean, it's TrustWave has the ability to scale down to here, but to scale up to here as well. And then we have some of their vulnerability assessment products.
With the Nitel, does it have to be taken like with other Nitel products?
Nope. Yeah, that's the thing about the security portfolio for us. A year ago, I don't know if it would have looked anything like this, right? But what we've tried to do is we realized that security, a lot of the cool security stuff is still kind of in that VAR type space, in that resale space. And so we're gradually seeing the people in our channel figure this out and understand that, okay, we've got to pair up with somebody. And that's how it started, right? It was, well, yeah, we have this great security thing. You can do it if you do our network. And that doesn't work all the time, right? That's just, if that works, it's great. So they're all shifting to that model of, well, yeah, we'll do this SIM a la carte, or we'll do this endpoint thing a la carte. So I would pay attention to the Telarus security portfolio because it's not done. I mean, I think we've made considerable strides, but we're still going to continue to add some of those. We've got a handful that we're looking at right now to add to help bolster that portfolio. It's all you.
Going back to your 5 questions, could we work on making that what I'm calling a blog for our clients and then put some points under it? Because I think that's a great thing to just send out to educate to our customers.
Yeah, we've got so much content on security, we'd be happy to have to put it together. Work with the marketing team, I can give you content, we can put a blog together, that's easy.
We'll make it part of the marketing toolkit.
Yeah.
There'll be a security marketing toolkit. We'll put it in, that's a great idea.
So are you guys going to have these presentations somewhere in a central repository too that we're able to get access
Yeah, we
to?
can share some sort of that. I don't know if I can share everything, but we can at least give you some key slides out of that, right? The ones that I think are valuable.
But we want a reach.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
All right. Just say yeah. Is there another question over here?
No, just about content, because I put together a landing page and need some content, so I'm looking.
Oh, we give you content all day.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Yeah, I just want to see how I get some of this information to reach out and who I reach out to about getting more of this, the content on the site. Kind of that next step, keeping that going.
So I would probably say just security. So while I lead up the engineering team, security is still my baby. I mean, I personally love that. We've got another guy on the team that helps with security as well, but I would say let's have a conversation. If anybody wants to come up and grab a card, just reach out to me and we'd be happy to get you some of that, disseminate that, and do those deep dives. Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks, Josh.